Hello, Michael Bull here with the Commercial Real Estate Show. We're at the 2015 National Association of Realtors Conference and Expo in San Diego. We ran into John Mangham with Starker Services. They're out of Atlanta, and you guys do business where, all over the country?
We're all over the country. We're headquartered in California, but we've been involved in exchanges in all 50 states.
Okay, and the 1031 exchange is a great program, and if you will, tell our listeners and our viewers about a couple of the exchanges that maybe they're not as familiar with, like a reverse exchange, because some people are afraid to sell their property and then hope they find something within the 45 days, but in some cases they can acquire the property, the replacement property first, right, and then sell?
You've just about summarized it. Michael, when people talk about exchanges, we break out the regular delayed exchange, and then we talk about complex exchanges. And that would be reverse exchanges and construction exchanges. But the reverse exchange is a little bit like a regular delayed exchange, where you sell a property, you've got a time period to identify and to acquire, and it's got to be equal or greater value. So in a reverse exchange, you buy the new one first, you have a time period. Well, it's actually the same time period that you have in a regular delayed. 45 to identify, 180 days not to acquire the new one, but 180 days to sell the old one.
Right.
So in a reverse, it's a lot like a delayed in that the rules are the same. It's just that you've got to acquire the new one before you've sold the old one.
Yeah.
And the biggest single factor that keeps people from doing a reverse exchange is that it requires significant financial strength.
Yeah, you got to have the capital to buy the replacement first, right?
That is the nugget. That's
right.
Absolutely the nugget. You've got to have the resources, whether it's financial, money in your back pocket, or the ability to borrow through one channel or another, but you've got to be able to buy the new one.
Yeah.
Some of the most sophisticated investors I know operate their portfolios not by deciding what to sell, but rather by looking for the next good deal.
That's fantastic. And one of the property types that seems like this would work extremely well in are single tenant net lease properties, where you have a set single tenant net lease property, you see cap rates have compressed, you've got some equity, you'd like to use that equity, but you're afraid you won't find something. So, but because when you get ready to, if you do a reverse exchange and you acquire a property, sometimes you may be worried that you might not sell the one you're selling fast enough to hit the time frames. But if you're selling a single tenant net lease property with 10 years on the lease, then you could sell that right away, right?
That ought to go out the door in 30 to 60 days.
Yeah.
But we all know the adage, you make your money when you buy the property. That is when you pin down the good deal. And so the sophisticated investors will actually shop the market. They'll go try to find that really good deal, get it tied up, and then start working on selling the old one. And if the old one hasn't sold yet, they'll take down that really good deal. So they're buying the best possible property, they're making their money on day one, and then they start their clock, and then they work on selling the old property.
Right, and they need to get in touch with you, right? So they acquire that property, that first property they're acquiring, which is going to be the replacement property. They got to acquire that in the intermediary's name, right?
That's correct. The technical term the IRS gives us is accommodation title holder. It's got to be put in an entity, not the taxpayer. And so it's sometimes called a parking transaction. We're going to park the property for a period of time. So you would come to us and say, I need to buy $1 million replacement. You put up the funds, we put it in an entity. For us, it would be Starker Properties Incorporated. We'll hold that title under contractual agreement with you. Then you go hustle and get your old one sold. When the money from your old one finally comes through, we transfer the title to the new property to you, and then the funds from the old one come back to you to repay the advance that you made to complete the reverse exchange.
And there's been a lot of these done, right?
We've seen a tremendous increase in reverse exchanges through the downturn, through the last 4 or 5 years. We're seeing people grab those really good deals.
Right.
And reverses get interesting. They're much more complex, they're harder to do. But one of our favorite twists on a reverse that we see happen occasionally is when somebody has, let's say there's $1 million property they're selling, and they go find a really good deal, $700,000 replacement. So they reverse into the replacement for $700,000. They've acquired a replacement property. They've got 180 days to sell the $1 million old one. So it sells out there at 150, 160 days, finally sells. They've got $300 left over. you literally can now start a forward exchange on the other 300, which means you can reverse in and forward out for a total window of up to 360 days.
Wow, we've learned something today. That's fantastic. I like that, and I did not know that. So let's talk about another exchange that people are using more and that has been around a long time as well, so it's safe, and that's the construction exchange. Tell us how that would work.
Michael, you hear phrases construction exchange, built-to-suit exchange, improvement exchange. Like the reverse, the intermediary is going to take and hold title to the replacement property, but it's a case where the replacement property isn't worth the full value. Let's say you're selling a property again for $1 million, and you want to build a property for $1.5 million. You go find a piece of dirt for $300,000 or $400,000, you get the plans and specs ready to go. As the QI, the qualified intermediary, we can take title to the dirt, and then according to your draw schedule, when the work is done, we pay the draws. Okay. So we get $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 done. It reaches $1 million on or before the 180th day. At that point, we transfer that replacement property back to you to complete the exchange, and then you finish out the remaining $500,000 of work to be done on that property.
Yeah, and that works great, especially when you have that property where you have a tenant to go in that property, right?
Oh, if you've already got a tenant ready to go, that's a home run. That's a complete winner. Construction exchanges are very difficult logistically. You still follow the 45 and 180-day time frames, and so we don't see lots of construction exchanges, not because they're illegal, but because it's so hard to get the work done in a compressed time frame.
Right.
It's a transaction you really have to start thinking about a year before you get to it. You really have to have your ducks in a row.
And then back to the reverse exchange, though, as you mentioned, when you are selling your property, you have really 180 days because you have to identify within 45. We're already identifying it. You're going to sell it, right?
Yep.
And let's say you had 3 properties. Could you identify 3 of your properties and put them all 3 on the market and sell the one that sells?
Exactly, Michael. You could go buy the really good deal, $1 million replacement. Then you could look in your portfolio, and now you're back to the sophisticated investor who says, I found a good deal for $1 million, and now I'm going to look at my playing cards. I'm going to put 3 of them on the market. Whichever one gets the activity first is the one that you exchange out of.
Nice. That works great.
Yep. That's a great strategy.
John, thanks for joining us today.
Michael, we appreciate the opportunity. Glad to be here.
Glad to see you again. Michael Bull with the Commercial Real Estate Show at the 2015 NAR Conference and Expo.
The Commercial Real Estate Show is brought to you by Bull Realty, a great place to do business. RealNex, software for productivity. Xceligent, information for the professionals. And Commercial Search, properties for sale and lease. To access these companies or for additional videos, podcasts, and articles, visit creshow.com.